Hey guys, it's Chelsea here. Things didn't go according to plan during this recording. We actually enjoyed the movie so much we couldn't stop talking about it, so this episode today is going to be a part one of 2 parts. As they say, the best laid plans of mice and Candyman often go awry. So please, sit back, and we hope you enjoy the episode. I watch movies differently now because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me like them more. And I learn more about them.
Yeah.
And I am shocked at how, because I didn't like Velvet Buzzsaw.
And now you do.
But the more I learned about it, the more I watched it.
And now I do.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, I didn't like it the first time through, but this one I had a good time.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of the way that I watch it now, but even when we sat down to watch it, I was like, oh yeah, Kelly didn't like this, so I'm worried that I'm going to like it, and then it's just going to be a big disagreement. Even if it was, I think that would be fine too.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have the opinions that we have. Yeah, I definitely
We'll have the opinions that we have.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
we won't. Why would we have those?
I went into it with a bad attitude, especially, so I'm in the middle of moving, right? And I spent 1,000 hours yesterday. Do you know how many goddamn plants I have? It's too many.
Too many. I think we talked about it last time.
I think we did. I moved them all to the new house yesterday, and it took so many trips, and I was so tired, and it was snowy, and I got a great core workout because I was having to balance on ice because guess who doesn't have a snow shovel for the new apartment yet, or the new house yet? Anyway, what was I saying? So when I finally sat down to watch the movie, I was like, I just want to go to bed. I don't want to do this. I don't know. One of my very early notes is Anthony is a babe. And that's about when I turned around and was like, okay, I guess we can. I guess it's going to be a good time.
I guess this will be all right.
Anyway, welcome to Never Show the Monster. I'm Kelly Attaway.
I'm Chelsea Hollander.
And today we're talking about the 2021, not remake, reboot of Candyman. Sequel? Yeah, I guess it's just a sequel. And we're excited about it. We're more excited about it than we thought we were going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely thought it was going to be one that I might just waddle through, but this one was super interesting.
Yeah, well, I think the reason I wasn't excited is because I had seen it before and didn't come away with glowing impressions. And I think I must have just been on Twitter the whole time, I don't think I was paying attention to the movie.
Yeah, I feel like that could end up dampening the experience for sure.
So as the credits rolled for this movie, I realized that Jordan Peele was involved. I totally forgot about that. That slipped my mind entirely. I remember when this movie was coming out, being excited. I was like, oh, Jordan Peele is a producer and it's a female director and Candyman is a classic. I was so excited about this movie. I don't know how that fell out of my brain over the months.
Yeah, I think he ended up being one of the co-writers of the screenplay as well.
I think you're right, yeah.
The director is Nia DaCosta.
While you were looking up trivia, did you find out anything about her? What is her relationship to the Candyman franchise?
Are you saying that there is one, or are you saying there's trivia I don't know?
No, I'm asking. I just wondered.
So she did well. I think it was Little Woods was the movie she had recently directed. Let me look. Got Tessa Thompson and Lily James. I haven't seen it, so I can't really give you any recommendation on if it's good or not. It looks like it's got a good cast. And I loved the movie that we watched. So if it's anything like that, it's going to be beautifully done.
Yeah, this was really just pretty to look at the whole way through.
Yeah. I don't know if she doesn't have any association with the franchise itself.
Well, I don't mean officially. I mean did she watch it as a kid and loved it and wanted to
I don't
do
know.
more?
I didn't look that up. I should have.
Okay, call her.
Okay, she's on my speed dial. We're best friends. I think it was a big thing that I did read a little bit about is that this Candyman was the first one that was predominantly a Black ensemble. So the cast is Black, the writer's director. Yeah, it is a movie where it does talk about the Black experience, and so does the original Candyman. But it was written by a white man. It was directed by a white man.
It stars a white woman.
Yeah, and the white woman's the focus, and it kind of you're still supposed to be sympathetic towards Candyman, but it is still making a Black man the villain, but it's an understandable villain.
Mm-hmm. Which, to be fair, this one does as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. But it has, you can feel kind of a difference because it's not from the perspective of white people.
Yeah, and this one is very careful to point out. Okay, I just made this connection on the fly. Oh my God, I feel like I'm writing an essay for college. So in movie, there's this scene. There are a couple conversations wherein this white lady critic is claiming that gentrification is caused by artists, not by white people. But all of the black characters, they all like know that it's caused by white people. Like, it's repeated throughout the movie. The ghetto is built by white people and then sold off. And that's sort of how Candyman gets created in this movie. Like, people, it's easy to look at Candyman and say, oh, black people made this horrible villain. But like, it all comes back to the way society treats black people. Like, white people created Candyman.
Yep. I feel like that's the end of it in summation.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
Yep.
We gave you a long episode last week, so this week, 11 minutes.
We did that one quick. We can start with the beginning of the movie now that we've dissected the movie in its entirety and just give it an overview of exactly how it is. Let's dive into the actual details of it. What I liked about the opening scenes was everything was backwards, so everything was mirrored.
What?
Yeah, if you notice, like, even I think the Universal logo came up, but everything was like it was in a mirror.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I don't know how I missed that. Because I was exhausted. Just moved 1,000 pounds of plants. Anyway, it was all mirrored. That comes up throughout the movie.
Where things are mirrored and you see them in reverse.
And like, yes, you see them in reverse, or like you only see things in a mirror.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that is different from the original. He's
out and about. He's a man about town in the original.
So maybe I have and I never saw it, but Monkey Paw Productions.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
I love that for their studio. Is it like a studio short? What do they call it? Like production company short, where it's just like that.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called officially, but like I've seen that on a couple horror movies.
Yeah, I'm into it. I like it.
Yeah, it's like, I guess Get Out was their first, huh? Because that's like a callback to Get Out.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I like that one every time I see it.
Yeah, that one's cute.
Yeah.
I guess it's scary. That one's scary. Sorry, it's not cute.
It is. I mean, it's scary, but it is cute. I mean, the hand is stirring like tea, coffee, tea, Sega.
It's tea in the movie that it's from, so I assume.
So we open on shadow puppets.
The kid is playing with the shadow puppets, and that kid will grow up to be a main character in the movie. But the shadow puppets, it's like 3 characters. There's 2 police officers and a black character, and the police officers are like, get down, and the guy is like, I didn't do anything. So like, this little kid is already like, while he's playing alone in his room, he's depicting police. I guess it doesn't go as far as brutality, but like, that was the direction it was
about to happen, and then it got cut off.
Yeah, I have a note like, oh man, this is such a bummer. Like, these shadow puppets look dope, don't get me wrong. Like, aesthetically, very cool. But plot wise, I was like, man, he's just a little kid, and he's already. And then that like leads into the next scene. He's off taking the family laundry to the laundromat in their apartment complex, which is in Cabrini Green. And the 2 white police officers sitting on their asses in their car, like very aggressively ask him if they've seen this man.
And for that scene specifically, did you watch Mindhunter, right?
Yes. It
reminded me of the scene where they were talking about black children and trusting cops.
Yeah, the guy who was like a record producer.
I think so. That's the one where they don't think it would be a white man because of the fact that black children are so apprehensive of going near them.
Yeah,
especially police.
These white cops are like, have you seen this man? And the kid like looks at them for a second and then hard turns away and just carries on going to the laundromat. And this is our first cool spooky mirror moment. He goes to open the laundromat door and the light clicks off and he sees a reflection behind him in a hole in the wall where it's dark. But when he turns around, nothing's there. But we know it's spooky. And so I knew that happened throughout the movie. Like, obviously I caught a couple my first watch through, but I like had my eyes peeled for it this watch through. And there was at least one I caught there were 2 I caught that I hadn't noticed in my first watch through. Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't watched it yet, like challenge yourself to look in any reflective surface, not just mirrors, but like say windows. It's dark outside of a window and the lights are on inside, like keep an eye on stuff like that. It's fun. They're fun little, like, that's the trivia.
I wanted to talk about the apartments that he had lived in. Obviously, they were low-income projects. They were projects.
They're projects, yeah.
And it was It reminded me of I obviously didn't grow up in the projects. There weren't projects in Arkansas, but they reminded me of the apartments I grew up in. I had originally grown up in a trailer, and then I moved to some lower income apartments. And the lower income apartments, and I'm going to say this because I've lived in different types of apartments throughout my life, they have a sense of community. Everyone sits outside. Everyone knows everyone. If you get into like the suburbs or like middle or upper income apartments, there's less community. I don't know if that's because of COVID or that's how I'm feeling right now. But even when I moved here to Seattle, like the first building I was in, people sat out on the stoop all day. Everyone knew everyone. That's always kind of a nice camaraderie to have. So it kind of, though it opens up on the project, it still felt kind of like a everyone knew everyone environment. Like it was still a community and you could feel the community there.
And that's like stressed throughout the movie, I think. Like even in this opening scene, there's like, you see there's a couple chatting actually about Candyman. They're chatting about Candyman coming out of the laundromat, and it's clear that like they live in this community too. You're seeing kids playing outside, you're seeing other families walking around the lawn, and even this opening scene is in 1977. So even, God, is that 50 years? Did I do the math right? 77, 87, 97, 07, 17. Okay, 45 years later. Oh,
gosh.
When Anthony goes back to Cabrini Green and we meet that kid who was doing the laundry, he's like he talks about what the community was like and what it's like now. Like that's an important part of the movie.
So he's in the laundry room and we see the door shut and we see a reflection behind him. And where does this come up at? Because I'm trying to remember, because I vaguely remember the story being told, and because he was like, that is when I saw fear.
Yes, I have that line in my notes as well. That doesn't happen for a little while, not until
okay, because when he retells the story.
I really want to talk about that too. I have a question about that line, and I want to see what your take is.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so after the 1977 scene, it's just a little guy to establish this little guy as a character.
That's what we'll call him for the rest of the movie.
Little guy. His name is Burke. We come to find out. Billy Burke, William Burke. So after that little establishing scene, it's present day, and we meet Anthony and Brianna. We're in their apartment, and Brianna's brother and his brother's partner are visiting for dinner.
Also, amazing apartment.
Such a good apartment.
I wrote a lot about that. And I was like, this apartment is beautiful. Every part of it's beautiful. The art's beautiful. Every part of it's beautiful. The bookcase is amazing. That kitchen is astonishing. The windows.
Yep. All so good. And like everything in this movie is rich with commentary. Like even that ends up being a commentary. They get to talking about, this is our first conversation about how white people built the ghetto and then sold it to developers for cheap. And they are living in a neighborhood that has been gentrified. And the brother's boyfriend makes a comment on it and the conversation gets very awkward for a moment.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
They're like, white people destroyed the ghetto for profit. And then he's like, oh, like they did with this apartment? Crickets. So they get to talking about the neighborhood, and we learn that the neighborhood is allegedly haunted. So they are in a part of Cabrini Green. So we learn that like, oh, this is haunted. Brianna's like, not my apartment. No, it's not.
When they said the neighborhood was haunted, I was like, yeah, I'd move there.
Oh yeah, I'm down. Although, as somebody who just bought a house, it was hard to find places that weren't actively being gentrified. Like that made me feel too gross. So maybe I wouldn't move there.
Yeah, good point.
Maybe in like another 50 years, like still haunted, but no longer actively pushing people out of their homes. So
I think that we learned that this is the point when you find out that if you guys have watched the first Candyman, that Cabrini Green, the high rises have been torn down. And that's the area that's being gentrified.
Yes. But these still seem like high rises? We just replacing high rises with high rises, or?
Yeah, with bigger windows, nicer kitchens. Yeah. Good bookshelves.
Less graffiti. So at this point, they're talking about how the neighborhood is haunted, how Cabrini Green is being gentrified, and Anthony gets all spooked. No, not Anthony. The brother. What's his name?
Brother. That's a great question, and I will tell you exactly who it is. The guy from Misfits.
Oh! Troy, yes. Troy gets all spooky and turns off all the lights and lights a candle and starts telling a scary story. And the first time I watched this movie, I did not clock that the story he's telling is the story of
the first movie.
Candyman. Yeah. I like totally missed that the first time I watched this movie. It had been so long since I had watched, like, I probably hadn't watched Candyman since I was a kid. So I like
same
didn't clock it at all. And then after I watched this a few months ago, I watched the original and was like,
I didn't remember her cutting off the head of the dog.
Oh, I remember.
And then that's the part where I was like, what?
Yeah. So he's telling this story just about some crazy woman who cut off the head of a Rottweiler and killed a bunch of people and herself, how she stole a baby. And I don't want to spoil anything, but who dat baby? Let's all just think about who that baby is.
Just consider it. We might circle back. We might not, but we probably will. We're definitely going to, but we might not.
We're going to circle back.
So he tells the story of, what was her name? Helen Lyle?
Helen Lyle. Yeah.
Helen Lyle. And they said that she went in to investigate the murders of, was it murders or just urban legends? The urban legends of Cabrini Green.
It started as urban legends. And then as she's investigating,
she does find out about murders
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the original movie, Helen Lyle.
And whenever they're going through the story, they do also do this in puppets, shadow puppets as well. And it's really well done. And I think that and speaking of, because we've talked about this in our art series, the shadow puppets look very much like Kara Walker's work. If you guys ever want to look her up, she does a bunch of art that is done with shadow puppet silhouettes. And it's very beautiful. So give that a check out. So she was investigating legends. They're shadow puppets. She goes crazy, abducts a baby that we may or may not hear about again. They talk about the new apartment being ghost-proof, so now it's just Anthony and Brianna together in the room.
Yeah, brother and his partner leave, and we learn in this conversation with just Anthony and Brianna that Anthony is showing art tomorrow to, I guess he runs the gallery that Brianna works at.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like she might be the person that takes care of the pricing of paintings and selling the art, and he is the one, maybe the curator.
Yeah, something like that. So he shows up the next morning. This guy's name is Clive, and
which is funny because the writer of the original movie is Clive Barker. I forgot that guy's name was Clive.
Oh, that's a funny little thing that they did there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Ouch. Did they not like him? Like, he's not. Oh, you'll find out what kind of character he is, guys.
No, he sucks. We can get into it now.
Okay, yeah, he totally sucks.
He sucks so much. He's like, Anthony is showing him some of his current work, and Clive is like, yeah, this is like Anthony of 5 years ago. Okay. I need the Great Black Hope of Chicago for tomorrow. Okay, what gross. A casual ask. Shut up, Clive. So Clive is like, I need the Great Black Hope of tomorrow for Chicago or whatever. And Anthony says, oh, I think I'm going to do something about where I'm from, the South Side Projects. And Clive fully says, oh, that's a little like done. Like, what the fuck? People's life experiences, like, you can't just tell somebody their life experience is done.
I was going to say, and this is to the point of also Velvet Buzzsaw, just people in the art world who aren't making the art are usually just not phenomenal people if they're not also making art.
Out of your ass.
Yeah. Comments he made were just absolutely awful, which is good. That's how they wrote the character. Great job, guys. I hate him. Thank you so much.
Away. He's been on screen for 30 seconds, and I'm already like, great scumbag.
But then he said he wants to do the same type of art, but for Cabrini Green.
And Clive's little ears perk up. He's like, oh, Cabrini Green, go on. So immediately, Anthony starts doing research on Cabrini Green. And if you'll remember from The Possession, we have another scene wherein he's just printing out articles for whatever reason, like he can't look it up on his phone. It is 2021. Throw that printer out the window.
You got to go look at the newspaper articles. Got to put your ears into those
nuggets. Little microfiche. So he takes these printed out articles to real life landscapes in the neighborhood and is like, he fully holds up a picture of a church and then he pulls over the church and then he puts the picture down and we're looking at the church. Like, we got it.
This is the church. That's the church. Same church? Are you sure?
Church?
I had to rewind to make sure. I was like, I can't.
Now hold on. But while he's doing this, I wanted to talk about this scene because I don't know that I get it. So a bee stings his hand, and that's important to the movie. He kills the bee. The bee falls to the ground, and ants swarm it. So is this a metaphor
for the community?
Are bees black people? Are ants white people devouring the corpses? Is it the other way? If it's the other way, why would Candyman be the bee guy?
So I think, are they going to eat him or are they trying to save him?
I don't think ants are trying to save that bee. I'm going to be real with you.
You're going to be real with me?
I'm going to real with you.
Well, I didn't remember the ants. I do remember the ants marching off, but I didn't think that there was anything with it other than, I feel like it is a metaphor that I don't know. It feels like a metaphor that went over my head.
Yeah. I paused and thought about it for a moment and thought about it like as I went to sleep last night because I don't think that I think that I still don't fully understand. I know, not to talk about college essays again, but like I know how I would double down on an essay to like sound confident, but I'm not confident.
Let's say audience at home.
Yeah, tweet us at noshowmonster. So he's taking these photos in Cabrini Green and he's just bopping around and it's vacant. Nobody's living there.
Also, he got stung by the bee and he immediately started swelling. It didn't even take seconds. It was like immediate swelling. I was like, I would go to a hospital. At that second.
Like if you don't have an EpiPen in your pocket right now, you need to see somebody about that. Which we can talk about in a minute because you know why.
Oh, yeah. That is my consistent note. Yeah. Every page is like, hospital.
Go to a hospital.
Hospital.
So he goes into this abandoned apartment, and this scene is very reminiscent of the original Candyman with Helen Lyle. Like, I don't remember the scene well enough to know if it's like a shot-for-shot remake, but it was very reminiscent. So in the original movie, Helen Lyle is also poking around Cabrini Green, and she's taking photos of the graffiti on the hallways. But when Helen Lyle is taking photos, people live in those buildings. And so when Anthony is in there taking photos, and I think she maybe was using a Polaroid.
Oh.
Anthony is taking photos of the graffiti, but now it's totally vacant. But there's this striking moment where he's photographing the inside of this apartment and he's in silhouette. There's light streaming through the boarded up windows. And what really struck me here was he got that booty.
I did not notice in the silhouette. This entire podcast is just Kelly noticing butts and me not just being completely oblivious that anybody has ever had a butt in all of time.
What's crazy is I don't think of myself as a butt guy.
But when you see it, yeah. You're like, I get it now. Yep. Yep.
So right after this, he's out on the lawn of Cabrini Green and he's about to cross like an alleyway and the cops drive by and like whoop whoop their siren. So not that they've seen him, they're just doing it because they're bullies. And so he like hides for a second and runs into a local who we will learn is Billy Burke, the kid from the beginning of the
AKA
movie.
Little guy.
And he's like got, I guess, bags of laundry. I don't remember what he has. But they get to talking about the old projects versus what it looks like today. Anthony goes with Billy to the laundromat that Billy owns. And they get to talking about Candyman. Anthony is like, can I take some notes? They start talking. And Billy has a line, Helen Lyle was out here looking for Candyman. If you ask me, I say she found him. Dodoy, of course she did. And this was so interesting to me. Anthony hadn't heard of Candyman. Like the legend basically had died out. So Laundromat Man is what he has in my notes. I know his name is Billy.
Or a little guy. I mean, we can call him so many things.
Also have him in my notes as local.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is where we get to talk about that line you wanted to talk about. So this is where he's telling his story of running into an iteration of Candyman in the laundromat. So we flash back to when Billy was a kid doing the laundry that day, and he sees that reflection in the mirror in the window behind him. He ultimately sees a man crawl out of the walls with a handful of candy. offers
He does
him
say that
candy.
they know him. Like, they've known him as a guy around the neighborhood.
Yes, he's known for giving candy to kids around the neighborhood, and he's got like a bad rap because he has a hook for a hand, which admittedly scary, but mostly because he's a black guy. Like
They said that the reason the police started looking for him was because they found a razor blade in candy, so they immediately assumed it was him.
right, but that's like easy profiling. And what happens in this scene is this man with the candy, we know his name is Sherman now from watching the movie. He offers Billy a piece of candy, but when Billy sees him, he screams. And this calls the attention of the police outside, who are asking him if he had seen so-and-so before. So Billy is leaving the laundromat and the police storm in. It's like a dozen cops. Like why are there so many white cops in this black neighborhood? You know, like, why were they all so close that we heard a scream and now 10 police officers can be down here? And we learn that they just like shot the shit out of Sherman with the candy, didn't ask any questions.
They also described it as beating him until he was unrecognizable.
Beating him until he's unrecognizable. And that comes up in imagery throughout the movie. Yeah, I guess they didn't shoot him. They just
they may have. I think they also shot him. I think that there were still gunshots. Like,
yeah, that's what I was
thinking. I think it was like a mixture of things that happened that just didn't make. But that's when the line happened. Was it when the kids screamed? It wasn't when the kids screamed, but it's when he heard the police coming.
And the line is, "That's when I saw the true face of fear."
Yeah.
And what did you think that was? The true face of fear?
He knew the police were coming.
Sherman did?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. I read it a couple different ways. I was like, either this is Sherman being terrified, or he saw the true face of fear on those cowardly cops who came barging in, murdering the first person they saw. I wasn't sure which way to read it.
I took it as, because when he said that was the moment that you see kind of Sherman do like a pause while he's holding the candy. Like, oh, I always give candy to the kids and it's fine and everything's fine. And then he screams and then you hear the cops come in and then you see Sherman, like a flash of it. But the timing is a little off to where
Billy's already out of the room.
Well, when he said, yeah, you might be right.
I mean, I genuinely don't know.
It is when he's walking up the stairs that he says that, right?
No, I think he says it before. He says it, well, now I can't remember. I'm going to have to rewatch the scene.
No, it's fine.
Because I think
it was a great line. Like, that was the line that stuck out to me most in the entire film.
Yeah.
And I mean, based on everything, it made sense to, but I have never thought about it in that context. But I think that is, I feel like we need to pause so I can think about it. Cause I'm like, oh, I didn't see it like that. But I feel like that's a very plausible explanation of it.
I almost wondered if it was meant to be ambiguous. Like, I'm really not sure. But this story inspires Anthony, and he runs home and paints a portrait of Sherman's corpse. Like, he pulls up photos of Sherman's beaten and bloody face on his phone. Finally, he doesn't print it out. And then he paints a picture of it. So when Brianna gets home, he's very excited to show her. He's like, I finally feel really inspired and connected to something, and I want to show you what I've been working on.
And she does not respond.
She does not. She calls it, she says, well, it's a pretty literal approach.
Moving from symbolism.
So in this scene where he's telling Brianna about how excited he is about this work and how connected he feels to it, he playfully summons Candyman. And Brianna is like, knock it off. And she's especially like worried about her apartment being haunted. He told her it was ghost proof, and he's like summoning Candyman.
Yeah.
And nothing happens. It's playful. She's like play slapping him, like knock it off. And then he hugs her and they kiss and the scene cuts away. But were you paying attention? Did you see
in the reflection?
In the reflection. You see Candyman in the reflection. This is when I missed my first watch through. Like, I was so focused on them my first watch through, I didn't see the reflection. So I like screamed when I saw it last night out of excitement, not out of fear. I made my cat jump off the couch. So then we go to this gallery showing that Clive was vetting Anthony's work for, and Anthony has a piece in the gallery. Can we talk for a second about, because we talked about Velvet Buzzsaw and the Los Angeles art scene being incredibly pretentious. How did you feel about the Chicago art scene? Also pretty pretentious.
I felt like pretty pretentious, but still pretty, it was like the club we went to in LA that everyone was really pretty. So Chicago, I could go into the art gallery in Chicago. I could not go into the art gallery in LA. They would not let me in. They would stop me at the door.
Yeah, when Chelsea and I went to a club with some of our more fabulous friends a few years ago in LA, and the person at the door literally looked us up and down, like saw her face and eyes scan us top to bottom. I was like,
I think we said it's okay. We don't want to be here.
I really desperately wanted her to turn us away. I was like, I do not want to be here.
But I feel like the vibe that we gave off that we don't need to be here. They were like,
okay, you can come in. That's right. We should have.
We negged them. We negged them.
We should have spelled more of desperation to get ourselves out of the situation.
Yeah, like, oh, I want to be in here. There are famous people, right? Please let me in.
Ew.
I'd be like, oh, okay. But we were like, we don't need this place. And they were like, you can come in. And we're like, God, fuck.
Son of a bitch. Yeah. And well, yeah, you're right. That's more how the Chicago scene is. Like, we could get in, especially later. Brianna meets some like bigwigs from New York, and they're like, you should come to New York. Chicago, such a small town.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of the art community does look down on them.
There was a very similar dinner in the first movie.
Oh, it's coming back to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone was super snobby and pretentious. And then I was like, oh, everyone's snobby and pretentious here too. There are feelings here and I don't like them. And everyone just seemed an air of just gross. I know I've said that before. I know I've said that before, especially when it comes to the art world. But that part of it's gross.
It was gross. There were a couple parts of this that were gross.
It was nice though, being like, oh, I want to help you further your career. Oh, looping back.
So a couple things happen at the art gallery. One, we see a very bored-looking teen come over to Anthony's piece, which I don't think we've described yet, but Anthony's piece in the gallery it's like a
medicine cabinet.
Yeah, it's like a triptych of mirrors. Mm-hmm. And you open it, and inside are these paintings he's been doing about Cabrini Green. And he has some like bigwig art talk, which sounds gross at first, but you realize he's saying it to this fancy schmancy art critic. Mm-hmm. So like, he's just playing the game. And he says that he was trying to calibrate tragedy into a focused lineage that culminates in the now.
Amen.
And I was like, got it. Okay.
I get every word of that and I understand it, and it's putting me
I do get it. His point was
I'm ensorcelled.
I'm ensorcelled. So he's like painted portraits of all of these different Black victims of horrible crimes in Cabrini Green, typically done at the hands of white people, maybe entirely done at the hands of white people. And he's trying to like bring them into focus. All of these different things are happening at different points in time, but they're all happening here. So what happens if we layer them on top of each other? Like, we reflect on what's happening in the now. Like, I understand the piece. I think it's a good idea. And this critic is fully just rolling her eyes. Like, we see a scene of her. She like pokes her little head into the medicine cabinet, which is actually a storage room behind the wall where all the paintings are. She like pokes her little head in and rolls her eyes. And this is where, this is an interesting conversation. They start talking about gentrification. And she says like, well, gentrification is the fault of your kind.
And he's like, my kind. And she's like, artists.
Artists. Nah, artists are not the cause of gentrification. So she goes on to like...
She made it like, you guys get together and a bunch of you live in a studio apartment and you live an artist life or something. And I was like...
Yeah, she was like...
No one in this movie is that.
No, they're like, Anthony is in a rich ass apartment with Brianna. Like, that's not what's happening here. But that's her point. And I just wanted to harp on it a little because that's going to become important.
Yeah.
Soon.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a fight between Anthony and Clive and some other guy at the gallery. I don't know who he is.
Yeah, did he have a name?
I don't know.
He was just like another guy that was kind of... Jameson?
Sure.
Okay. He's another artist, I think.
I got the impression he was another artist, but he was like full of himself and he was talking shit about Anthony's piece. Well, I guess he wasn't talking shit. He didn't realize he was talking shit. He was like, what he says is like, oh my God, I can't believe you found those pieces. Where did you find them? In like a thrift store or something? Those are so like basic. What a great idea to like put them in a storage room that you have to like seek out. And I couldn't tell if he knew that Anthony had painted those or if he
I feel like he did. I feel like he was being a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that is driven home during that dinner.
Anyway, this guy sucked. And so Anthony like pops off on him, says something catty, and he's clearly drunk. He got drunk at this gallery showing. And so he's like stumbling out, and Clive says something shitty to him, and Anthony comes back with an incredible retort. Something
it was great.
Something about affording condoms for your summer intern program because Clive has a thing for the young ladies.
And then he was like, I bet you had that locked and loaded. He was like, I did,
Sure
bitch.
did.
I was like, this is the best joke.
I know. I love that.
I'm so happy. Like, all I see in my notes right there is great joke.
Clive recovers so poorly. He's like, I'm comfortable with being called a bitch.
Oh, and then the girl is like, but I'm on NuvaRing. It's fine.
I know. And he's like, stop it. You're proving his point. Stop it. So then it's after the showing, and it's just Clive and his like young paramour, who I can't tell if she's like illegally young. She's like too young for him, but I don't know if she's like a child.
She might be. No, she's got to be like 20. She's probably in college.
You think she's 20? Okay.
Yeah,
well, she
I think
looks
she's
like
probably
a little
in
baby to
college.
me. And she's trying to sex up Clive in the gallery. Clive is making fun of Anthony's work, and she's like, let's do it though. Let's summon Candyman. Summons Candyman, and all of a sudden her throat is slit. like, oh boy, she hella dead.
It felt like a vampire scene almost. Like I was like, well, I mean, it is kind of like
it's sort of reverse vampire though. Like you can only see him in mirrors. You can't see vampires in mirrors.
I liked that Clive was like, is this a joke? Is this real?
Is this real?
Is this real? And I was like, that's probably how I would react to that situation
that's
as well.
Absolutely how I would react. I watch a lot of dumb crime TV. Like, if y'all need
for my old
20 seasons of something, watch Midsummer Murders. It's British. It's great. And every time somebody like finds a dead body and screams blood curdlingly, I'm like, that is for sure not what I would do. I would laugh and like poke them and be like, get up. like I would not think it was real. So I get why Clive was like, is this real? Is this real? But then he starts seeing, this is an interesting scene because he's seeing Candyman in a giant mirror, and he's seeing the actions of Candyman reflected in real life in what the mirror is reflecting. So he's seeing a big like projection screen being torn open by Candyman's hook, but he can only see Candyman in the mirrors, which makes for a cool running away scene. So while the gal was trying to sex up Clive, she hooked them together with something on her clothing. I don't know. So
yeah, why would you do that?
I don't know. Like, you're going to take that off.
Exactly. And also, that's if you are going to take that off, does that mean you guys just have to take down your pants at the same time? Is it hooked to a shirt? Like, where's it hooked?
Where's it hooked to?
Was it pants to pants? And then does that ensure that you guys have to take off your pants at the exact same time?
Or are we going to do like through the fly stuff?
Oh, maybe. Well, but I was like, I don't understand how.
No, I was like, logically, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So Clive has another stupid line in this scene. He's like unhooking himself from the gal, and he's just repeating, must go faster, must go faster.
I feel like his death scene is more accurate than most death scenes. Yeah. And like somebody being murdered with him, I feel like I would respond very similarly to how he would.
Yeah. So he's
which
like
doesn't make me proud. Very disappointed in myself.
Listen, he's a scumbag, but
he didn't survive.
No, and nor would I. If Candyman came after me, like, I'm donezo. So he's like running for the door, and he can't see Candyman, right? He can only see him in reflections. And Candyman, oh boy, grabs him. He gets got and like pulls him back through the gallery to stage him in front of Anthony's work.
But whenever they pull him and his face hits the ground, that is a constant fear that I have every time I'm walking. Just walking in my kitchen. I just constantly am like, is my face going to hit the ground and cause exactly what happened in that scenario?
It was a huge spatter of blood. Oh, that was rough. He deserved it. You don't, but he does.
Thank you. Hopefully fate also thinks I don't deserve it.
So while this double murder scene is happening, we get glimpses of Anthony back home in his studio, and there's a bee buzzing around.
On a mirror?
On a mirror, but it's on the other side of the mirror. It's on the wrong side of the mirror.
And he touches it and there's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is like The Ring, but opposite.
Oh.
Do you remember how she touches the video of the fly and pulls it out? Anyway, his hand is fucked. His hand looks real bad.
His hand's real gross.
It's only going to get worse. after
Honeycomb
this,
hands.
honeycomb hands, Brianna finds the bodies the next morning, and that's not great for her.
She's the Coco.
She's the Coco.
She's also holding coffee. Sorry, I'm running through the movie as we're talking about it. She's also holding coffee while she finds the bodies. Is that in an art gallery, if you find a body, you have to have coffee in your hand legally, or you don't really find it?
Yeah, you don't get the royalties if you don't have coffee. So eventually Anthony goes to the library and he's trying to find more information on Helen Lyle. And he finds this whole, I guess it's not a case file because it's the library and not like police, but he finds this whole file on Helen Lyle, including the recordings she was taking throughout the original movie. And I thought that this was a really interesting. We just hear snippets of the recording, and I don't know if I don't remember them from the original movie or if I watched another movie recently that I think is coloring my thoughts on it. But she starts talking about the collective unconsciousness. She's like, Candyman is a creation of the collective subconscious of Cabrini Green. She is like waxing poetic on it. She's like, I get it. It's like so alluring to summon him in a mirror. Me and my friend did it. Like, I get why it's so appealing, but are you familiar with the concept of a tulpa?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so a tulpa is like a manifestation brought to life by very intense concentration and willpower. And typically...
like poltergeist?
Poltergeist are a little different because poltergeist are not intentional. So poltergeist...
Okay. Oh, so it isn't intentional. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, I guess it's not always intentional. Like Slender Man.
Oh, okay. So you give it some kind of... like you give it a visualization, an idea, or like... okay, gotcha. So like you project it yourself.
So right, you project it yourself, but it can be done by like a community. So
gotcha.
If you read about some hauntings, some people believe that the place was never actually haunted. Somebody made up a story one day and enough people like listened to it and believed it. And now you can catch evidence of that haunting because people have manifested it. So it's not like somebody sat down and was like, I want the thing, though that you can also do that with a tulpa. But like if enough people believe, you like generate this truth. And that's what I was thinking of with Candyman. Like enough people believed in Candyman that now he's out and about in the world. And that was just like a throwaway line. That's not what the movie is about, but I thought that was really interesting. And if you are intrigued by the idea of tulpas, go check out the movie The Empty Man. It's really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wanted to watch that, but I keep putting it off.
No, highly recommend.
Oh, okay. Where were we? What were we? Oh, she was listening to her.
Yeah, he's listening to her recordings. And he has an interesting scene. There, for some reason, this library has like a fully mirrored elevator, like mirrored walls, mirrored ceiling. That feels more appropriate in Las Vegas than it does in a Chicago library. So there's this, in this
mirrored elevator,
a piece of candy falls from the ceiling and he cuts himself on it. There's a razor in the candy.
Yes.
Oh, and I don't think that we closed the loop on this earlier. So when Billy was telling Anthony about Candyman, this man, Sherman, who was giving Billy the piece of candy and who was murdered by the police because he was putting razors in candy, it wasn't him. It was somebody else. Like days after Sherman was murdered by the police, more razor blades and candy was found. So it wasn't ever him, which made this scene a little bit curious to me because it's Sherman who's a Candyman. Why is he now throwing candy with razor blades in it? I guess it's that tulpa thing. Like the people believed that that's what he was doing.
Yeah,
so
good
he is
point.
now. So yeah, Anthony cuts himself on this piece of candy. The elevator starts malfunctioning. He's seeing crazy reflections of a battered Sherman in the ceiling of the elevator. And the elevator suddenly opens and things are fine. The lights are back on. It's no longer shaking and making crazy noises. And it's a group of white kids outside the elevator. And Anthony has to like collect his stuff and stand up and walk through this group of white kids. And that was very striking to me. At
the beginning of when he goes and gets the items from the librarian, I remember him, because I'm assuming this is at a university library.
Yeah, probably. That's where she was doing her research.
And she was like, are you a student? And I was like, do you ask people at the university library if they're a student?
Yeah, it's weird that he didn't have to provide ID to like check this out.
If somebody walked in and asked me for something.
Do you know what? She was like, she took off her glasses. She straightened her hair. She was just trying to make conversation to flirt with Anthony. Cutie patootie.
That's a good point. She's all dead ass. I
don't think she was librarian at that point. I think she was like, oh, hello.
It is true. There was a very flirtatious vibe.
Yeah. She was just trying to make convo.
I don't blame. Then after that, they go, I think the next shots are back at his art studio and he's painting all of these portraits and he looks like he's gone crazy while he's painting them. Like he has his tongue out of his mouth, his eyes are kind of glazed over, and he is just painting portrait after portrait. And it's these kind of gruesome portrait paintings. And then I don't know if you find out how soon after this you find out, but that they're portraits of other
murdered black men in Cabrini Green.
Then he goes to the
critic's house.
Apartment, yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like she's invited him and she's suddenly interested. Like she was
that was also a thing earlier. Whenever they found the dead bodies in front of his art piece, he started to get a lot of publicity for his art piece, specifically because of the deaths that had happened in front of his art piece, not necessarily because of the art piece itself. But everyone's saying the name of the art piece, which is Say My Name.
Say my name, say my name. Say, baby, I love you.
He ends up going to the critic's house because now she is super interested in his art after getting all this publicity, even though she said some real shitty things about it to begin with.
She said some real shitty things and he calls her out. He's like, you didn't seem that interested the last time we talked. It didn't seem like you got it. You were saying that artists cause gentrification. And he basically goads her into summoning Candyman. He's like, if you really want to engage with the work, you have to do it. And so she's getting uncomfortable and excuses herself and goes to the bathroom. And I think we don't see her summoning Candyman, but Anthony goes to find her because he's picking at his gross ass hand and it starts bleeding.
He scabs it. He pulls the scab off. You don't even know what the scab is. Is the scab a scab or is it arm?
It looked like arm.
What is it?
It looked like arm. So his bee
that was another part where I was like, hospital. Why are you not at the hospital? It's like gone all the way up his arm at this point.
It's all the way up his arm. So he starts bleeding in her living room while she's in the bathroom. So he picks up like a cocktail napkin and wraps it around his hand and goes to find the critic. And she's got a giant mirror in the hallway. And he sees himself in the reflection, but sees himself as Candyman, like Candyman with a hook. He sees himself as Candyman with a hook, and it's the hand that's all fucked up. So he's like reaching out his bee stung, scabbed, gross ass hand to the reflection, and the reflection is mirroring him exactly as though it is him. So like he's reaching out his hand, and Candyman in the mirror is reaching out his hook, and he reacts very strongly. As you would, like if you look in a reflection and it's not you. Oh my God, can I tell you? This episode is going to be long again. Can I tell you about when I first got my first apartment and had my first big kid job, I kept having this recurring nightmare where I'm like in my apartment just bumming around and there's a banging on the door and somebody bursts in the door and it's like a whole gang of police and they've got their guns drawn and they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I live here. Like, this is my living room. And they're like, no, you don't. This is Kelly Attaway's apartment. And I'm like, I am Kelly Attaway. And they're like, no, you're not. And I look to the left and there's a mirror there. And in the reflection is somebody else.
Oh my God.
Isn't that so scary? I had that recurring dream for years. For years, I had that dream. And it's just imposter syndrome is all it is. But like, this scene, seeing somebody else in your reflection, that's scary. That's so scary.
Have you seen the movie Mirrors?
With, what's her name?
Does it have, it has Amy Smart.
Amy Smart. I don't know
it might have Kiefer Sutherland. I feel like I'm making that up. It has somebody that's got a name. Amy Smart.
Yeah, it's,
Kiefer Sutherland.
Okay.
But that has one of the scariest scenes. I mean, I was going to talk about this at the end, but I am horribly afraid of mirrors.
Yeah, you hate them.
That's probably one of my biggest fears. And this movie has a scene where, like, you're looking at yourself in the mirror, and then you like move and do something, but the mirror of you is different.
Stays? Oh.
Yeah, and then it does other stuff, and it just constantly happens. So that movie scares the shit out of me, but I don't think it is known as one of the scariest movies. I don't think many people are as affected by it as I am, and this is also why Candyman got me really bad. I had watched it when I was a child, and I have always been afraid of mirrors because of it. Like, watching this movie was just bringing up all those things where I'm like, oh. But the thing about the original Candyman is, even though that happened, unlike that, this movie does so well in only making what happens be inside the mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, the violence is real, but the mirror is the only thing that captures the visibility of it.
Right, which is what we see in the scene. So Anthony is freaking out audibly. He's making noises. And so the critic pops her little head out of the bathroom and is like, is everything okay? And this is like where we really know that she must have summoned Candyman, because Anthony turns around to look at her and he can see her reflection behind her in the bathroom mirror, and you can see Candyman like leaning out of the doorway in the mirror reflection. And this is another one I didn't catch on my first watch through. Yeah, I was like, she did it. Which she must have, because
the next scene, or the next part of the scene.
Anthony leaves. He's freaking out. He's got to go, and we see the critic. The camera zooms way out, and so
this was a really nicely done scene.
Yes, agreed. Camera zooms way out of the apartment. Like, we're outside the apartment. We're just looking in her giant windows on like the 50th floor or whatever, and we see her being like thrown around the apartment. Like, she's done getting murdered. And if she had just been respectful, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Oh, yeah. That is the moral of the story. But the other part that I have about that scene is, also, I love that scene, but everyone's watching the football game. Literally every TV is only the football game. Well, I mean, I'm sure that maybe 50%. Am I just like wrong about people who own TVs? Is the reason that people own TVs just for football? At least 50% of them should be watching something else, right?
I honestly didn't notice what was going on in the other windows. I was pretty focused on the murder one.
That's how I feel every time I pass. Like, if I'm walking outside at night and I pass another apartment, I always look at the TVs to be like, what are they watching? And I constantly am just trying to figure out what everybody is watching on TV. Everybody was watching football. Is that the only thing they had rights to show on the tiny little screens that no one could see when you pan out?
They were
show
like,
other clips of the
look at these
movie.
other windows.
I did! I feel like if I slowed it down, maybe I'd find out that the football games weren't even happening at the same time. Am I supposed to believe they're different football games?
They all just have different bandwidth. Like, one's Xfinity, one's Cox.
Thanks for listening. You guys can find us at noshowmonster on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email noshowmonster@gmail.com. Kelly and I also have a friend who recently had some complications from a surgery, and if you have any extra cash to spare, she's got a GoFundMe. It'll be under Bailey's Medical Aftercare and Family Support. Tune in next week when things really start to pick up in our part 2 of the episode. Goodbye and stay spooky.